Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Xony, and today we're going to have some more stories from Reddit. But before we start, it would be so much appreciated if you would subscribe to my channel, like the video if you enjoy it, and maybe leave a comment down below. These simple clicks would mean a lot to the future of this channel and really reward the effort that I put in every day. And now, without further ado, let's go. Now let's get into today's stories to find out what happened. One quality I 40 admired in my wife 44 was her enthusiasm for holidays. She said whenever she gathered with others to celebrate, it felt warm, fuzzy, and magical. Easter was no exception. She loved dyeing eggs and taking the kids on Easter egg hunts. Even though our twins grew to be too old for Easter egg hunts, she maintained her holiday routine. In preparation for Easter, she collected and boiled our chickens' eggs, dyed them, usually with the help of our sons, and used them in the egg hunt for the younger kids at the church. Besides basically hosting the church event, she also planted a large combination of daffodils, crocus, and hyacinth seedlings. She had at least 200 flowers ready for sale 9 days before Easter. She transported them with her Xony from the grow tent in the backyard to her selling spot on the corner by the supermarket. I helped her with this project every year, including last year's Easter holiday, when unbeknownst to me, she met AP. There were no clues that she was communicating with another romantic partner. She would just so casually tell me she was talking to her mother. I did not get along with my mill. She drove me crazy, but I tolerated her for my wife and children's sake. By this Easter, our twins were 15 years old, so they didn't exactly jump up to go to Grandma's house. Thank goodness I had a reason to stay home. Now, how could I have known I couldn't trust my wife when she told me she was talking to her mother or going to see her mother on this Easter Sunday? My wife already had the eggs hidden for the children to find in the grass and trees behind the church. The teenagers wanted to stay home, and since my wife told me her mother was going to be at the church, probably close to my wife, I elected to stay home. About 30 minutes after my wife, her mom called the house phone. I was a little concerned, so I answered it. It became clear that she never intended to join the Easter egg hunt this year. She was calling to see if my wife could come over after church to clip her toenails. I shuddered and hung up, since I distinctly remembered her telling me her mother would be there. My hunch told me something was up. I let my teenagers stay home and went to the egg hunt. I spotted my wife standing alone, watching the children hunt for eggs. I walked over to her, and as soon as I greeted her, I saw panic in her eyes. She kept glancing at the church building like she expected someone to come out any minute. She quickly asked me why I was there. But before I answered, she told me her mother would be back out from the restroom any minute, so I should go back home. I calmly and grudgingly told her that I already knew her mom wasn't here. Her face and neck turned red, and she started itching until she saw a man come out of the church and start heading towards us. She quickly told me the man headed our way was just a friend that wanted to date her, but she already told him she was married. I was confused and hardly had time to think before he asked me if I was the reason she ghosted him the past week. I said excuse me, and then told him she was my wife and we were married for the past 19 years. He was immediately deflated and told me they'd been seeing each other for a year. I was taken aback. It felt like the wind was knocked out of me. She told me that wasn't true and that he'd been harassing her to the point where she considered calling the police. I just looked at her like she was crazy and asked how that could have been happening without me knowing. AP called her a liar and demanded she tell me about their plans for the future. When she covered her face, he grabbed her wrist to move her hand, and without thinking, I pushed him in an attempt to stop him from touching her. This resulted in us fighting. I remember getting a few punches in before I blacked out. When I came to, the police were there and many of the egg hunting children were gone, left in a hurry with their families because of the brawl. I was seen in an ambulance, and it was concluded I had a concussion. The police told me what I already found out. My wife was cheating on me. The word got around fast from people that went to our church, and she was pretty much shunned by all of them. As far as I know, she was practically banned from ever stepping foot in that church again. I couldn't imagine my wife willingly seeing a man, even planning a future with him, all behind my back. It felt like a nightmare. It came to light that he had a child from a previous marriage who was present at the egg hunt that my wife invited them to. AP told me that he was ending things with her as well, since he had no idea she was married. He mentioned that she begged him not to leave her, and said that she told him I was abusive, which was completely made up. It was disturbing to me how my wife could sabotage our entire family all by one idiotic decision. This was enough to end everything we had together as a family, and it broke my heart. The kids and I didn't deserve this. I read posts about this in the past. But since I never did anything to betray my wife's trust, discourage her, or disappoint her, I never thought she would have a reason to cheat on me. I was just dumb for failing to realize this would happen to me. Now let's get into today's second story. My wife and I were chefs in a gourmet kitchen in New York City. We knew each other for 14 years and were married for 9. We enjoyed every day together, working nearly identical shifts at the restaurant. Ratatouille was our favorite movie because our hats were identical. A year after the movie, I actually adopted 2 pet rats as a joke for my wife. She loved them. She told me months later. She didn't know she could get so attached to rodents. Anyway, our relationship was great and full of imagination and happy times. After our rats passed away, we decided to conceive. When we struggled to do so, we took it as a sign to adopt. Our daughter's first birthday with us was her 8th. She had some emotional challenges that we worked through together through honesty and patience. It felt like our family was strong and united. So, when I got a phone call from the police 2 years later, I was extremely confused. I was at the grocery store with my daughter, and as far as I knew, my wife was working a shift at the restaurant. The police informed me that she was at the police station unharmed, but they wanted to ask me some questions. I was a little unsettled, and my mind raced until I got there with our daughter under my sister's watch. The police started asking me questions like, "When did you find out what your wife was doing? And how long did you plot revenge against him?" All I would ask repeatedly, "What is going on? Where was my wife? What happened?" I had no idea what they were talking about, and after about an hour and a half of interrogation, they believed me. They verified that I was at the grocery store at the time of the attack. The attack on AP in his own home. While my wife was there having intimate with him, he was stabbed by an intruder while he was in bed with her. The culprit was covered from head to toe and fled the scene. My wife was the one that called 911. I was terrified. I started crying uncontrollably. My wife cheated on me and experienced this traumatic event. Then I felt relieved that I was recorded at a different place during the attack. Being the dedicated father I was determined to be as I shopped for groceries, my wife was cheating on me. I felt so stupid, even though there was no way I could have known. Then the police told me this guy was in critical condition and he was having an affair with more than 4 other women. My wife just happened to be there when someone else wanted revenge. They let me go, and I saw my wife waiting for me. She looked disturbed and restless. When she saw me, there was brief relief, followed by great sadness. When she remembered she cheated on me, I walked right by her, refusing to speak. She followed me crying and begging to talk about this. I told her we were over and that I planned to start seeing other people immediately. I sarcastically told her she made an excellent choice for an affair partner because he was very experienced. She admitted she was extremely stupid for sleeping with this guy after they talked for about 2 months on a dating app. But that was all he would ever amount to in her life. She pretty much demanded that I forgive her because she was worth it, and we already spent so many happy years together. I told her she ruined everything. Just before I slammed my car door and drove home, I called my parents and sister came over to help me through this time and try to make our home environment happy for my daughter. Within 24 hours, I filed for divorce. She tried to come home that same day and got into a fight with my parents when they refused. After some screaming, they actually managed to convince her to leave with just a few suitcases of her belongings. When our daughter saw her again, she told her she was very disappointed in her. Can you imagine that? Hearing that your 10-year-old adopted daughter is disappointed in you. After all we went through to adopt her and work through her emotional trauma, my wife let her down and made her a little less hopeful. That was enough punishment in itself. But my wife was obviously divorced by me, so she lost her home, and then she was also fired from the restaurant. I told our boss that we worked for the past 12 years what happened and how our relationship ended in the worst way possible. She lied to me that day. She didn't have a shift to work. They decided this made her untrustworthy and fired her for it. She was so deflated and disappointed in her life's new path that she didn't fight for her job. She just accepted it. She's still living at her parents' without a job or plans for the future. My daughter and I have been quite the opposite, just hopeful and keeping ourselves busy. Besides work and school, we go hiking, camping, sailing, and travel to fun destinations.